Hey guys, this is Russ and Gabi, and this is SheWolf Alchemy. And today we're talking about healing from emotionally immature parents. Now, some of this came from a couple of things. Conversations I think both me and Gabby have been having with other people in our lives, things that we have been seeing. But also, it's coming from a book. I don't know if you guys have read it. It's a book I recommend all the time to clients. It's called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And it's an amazing book. And it has a lot of good lessons on it. And while we will be talking about some things that's explored in this book, I want to make it very clear. Buy the book. It's going to give you way more info. We are just breaking down some common things that we see in very layman terms. But if this is touching on you and this is not sponsored, it should be. It should be. This comes across our desk. I very much like a check. But if you are listening to this and you're like, dang, this is really good, I always recommend the book. It's an awesome, great, and easy read. So, yeah, Gabby, talking about emotionally immature parents, kind of what was your first thought when we were discussing this idea?
So I think my first thought was like, this is deep because as parents, sometimes, especially when you have young parents, I don't think they realize how their actions, their words, even some might even go as deep as in their facial expressions kind of affect you growing up.
Yeah.
Sometimes how their drama between parents, that drama
Mhm.
between parents that affects children growing up. I think sometimes they don't look at how even a parent, like, yelling at you and, like, mistreating you like that affects your psyche, like, that affects you growing up as an adult, and so when you become an adult, there's things that you'll be like, "I'll never do this," or, "I'll never make sure I won't have this," or, "I won't treat my children like that," but some way, like, if you don't work through those emotions, you end up repeating the cycle,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
so
And it's so funny because me and my mom are actually talking today. Me and my mom were in a car today. We actually took my daughter to the fair. And we were in a car
Mhm,
driving home, and we were having a conversation about different generations. My mom is a boomer, like, my parents are in their 60s and 70s. I
mhm.
think I don't know my dad's real age because that man's a liar, but I'm pretty sure that man's in his 70s. And, like, we were talking about, like, the difference in generations because, again, my parents are boomers. I'm a millennial. My daughter is I think they're considered Gen Alpha. And we're actually talking about jobs, really working, because I was in, I've the last couple years of my life, I've been in manager positions, and my mom, pretty much all my life, has always been, like, in higher up positions, and we were talking about the difference because, like, when was this? Like, 2 years ago? There was a thing going around on social media
Mhm.
where they were like, "This generation don't wanna work. Nobody wants to work." And when I first heard it, I was like, "Yo, no, that's crazy." Until I started hiring folks, y'all. So I gotta start dealing with folks. But I still felt like it was crazy. It wasn't the same way. But anyways, we're talking about that and we're talking about the difference in generations. And she was like giving me some feedback about Gen Z. She was like, working with Gen Z is different. She's like, working, I have to do a
Yeah.
lot of work on professionalism with them that I've never had to do in my life. Anyways, then like one of the things that came about was kind of like why some of the generations were so different. And basically, the conclusion that we both came to is that each generation parented out of what they lacked. And
Mhm.
it just created a whole different cycle. And you were trying to run for a particular cycle, but you still create the same thing. Like the boomer generation, their parents are in survival mode.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't about dream big, get your dreams done. You can go to school. But they were like, we are trying to pay bills. I got 17 babies. This man keep knocking me up.
Yeah.
I just want y'all I'm trying to marry y'all off, get y'all out the house, and y'all survive. So that generation, like, my mom's and them generation, they took from that, like, no, you gonna have dreams and you gonna do something and you gonna work hard and you gonna be independent and you blah, blah, blah. Because they were like, nah, because, didn't nobody tell me I got dreams. Didn't nobody care about my dreams. And they pushed that. But then for our generation, for us, it was a lot of y'all cause us anxiety. Because I got a B. A B is a good grade. Why are you punishing me and telling me
Yeah.
I'm smarter than that? And it's that damn phone. So now I can't have a phone. So now I'm just in my room depressed when I did have good grades. I wasn't allowed to go out. I wasn't allowed to socialize. I wasn't allowed to, put me in a strict school, all these things and how like, okay, so we took that and then we are parenting our kids. And now we have kids where it's like, Um, according to my mom, we too soft on them. And so they don't have no manners or respect. And so, anyways, just you say you don't want to repeat a cycle. And so you try to parent out of your wound, but it still creates almost a similar type of cycle. It might have a different outcome, but it's
Mhm.
still you are parenting from a wound instead of parenting your child based on who they are.
So I have a Gen X parent.
Mm,
My mom is a Gen X. She had me very young and she didn't grow up with parents. So like I said, take everything that I'm about to say with a grain of salt. So my childhood was a little different. My mom worked a lot, so I grew up with being very independent very early.
mm,
Um, I didn't have a problem with it because you asked me, I had a dope childhood. Mom put me in everything. Girl Scouts, I was gonna say Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, basketball, soccer, swimming, softball. Like there was this club I used to go to, like all girl club or some stuff. But I think because I always knew my mom would always have my back, my emotional, my unavailable
mhm,
emotional parent decided not to parent. And I think growing up, that really affected the way I looked at the world, and especially when it came to men. So I grew up there being like, I've always made sure I'm big dog. Like, I got me. And I think for growing up with a Gen X parent, I think that independence instilled very early in her
mhm.
because I think specifically that generation did not have a choice.
Yeah.
As far as when it came to, like, having kids, like, being emotionally available, they never got the opportunity to be emotionally available. Why? Because they had to get it,
They were the
and she always
latchkey. They were the latchkey generation. Like you come home from school, go get you go warm up some food.
Yeah.
Go, you let yourself
Yeah,
you make sure you
easily.
fold up the laundry before I get home.
Mhm. And so she tells me it's always interesting we have these conversations because she'll tell me, like, how, like, other day we were having a conversation and she was like, "Gabby, like, when are you gonna do this?" Talking about my business and stuff. And I was just like, I'll do it." I said, "Not just right now. I'm just emotionally tired." And she just kind of shook her head. And I just was kind of like, "Why are you offended?" She was just like, "I've learned that me and you are different. And I can't get upset when you say things like that. It's just growing up for me, I never got the opportunity to say that, or I just always had to get it done. So
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard for me to accept that that's just where you are,
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And I understand growing up in her time, you really weren't supposed to have kids out of wedlock and do all this
Mhm,
other stuff. And if you did, you really didn't get a lot of help. You had to get it
mhm,
at the mud. So her get it is different than my get it. I take my
yeah.
time but to get it. She just gonna get it. If that makes sense.
It does.
So
Well, and so and that's one of the things like I want to touch on today because I think when you hear emotionally immature parents, we all think of the very obviously bad parent.
mhm,
Think of the one who like cusses you out. You like, why was I being called a bitch when I was 4? I I
mm,
was 4. Why why am I those are the type of parents I think people normally think of when you think of that, the very obviously bad parent. The parent that abandoned you, the parent that like legit checked out of parenting. Was like, "Ah, no thanks." But one of the things I do love about this book is that it kind of breaks down, and it's something that I have seen in my practice a lot. Is sometimes, and especially, I will say this, especially with my Black clients, I call it the Cosby syndrome. And I call it the Cosby syndrome because of myself. I had like the Cosby syndrome myself of like this idea in my head of like, especially the first time I went to therapy, and
mhm,
then they were like, okay, talk to me about your family. I'm like, oh, we don't have to talk about my family. My family's fine. My parents are both extremely educated. All 3 of my parents got 3 degrees each. My parents are the Huxtables. They're very much like the Huxtables, not the Cos, not Bill Cosby, not what he's doing right now. We do not condone that. But anyways, the Huxtables. And I had this idea in my head, like, no, we're the Huxtables. We don't need to touch it, blah, blah, blah. But I was having some symptoms and some stuff going through that it was just like, yeah, but where is this stemming from?
mhm,
You have all this anxiety, you have all this stuff going on, and it seems to be stemming from your childhood, but you will not let me touch on family. And I see
mhm,
this a lot with especially and I'll say especially like my middle class, upper middle class Black clients of like, no, don't touch on it. I have to protect this image I have. because I was well taken care of, I was fed, I was told I love you, and supported my dreams, and so everything was good. And here's the thing, when we're talking about breaking down family dynamics and so forth, it's not to sit up here and be like, "They ain't shit." It's not to do that. It is to say it's to help you figure out where did some of these stressor key points come from, because you can't get to the remedy if we don't know the root. If I
That's very
think it's a
true.
cut and it's a broken bone, putting a Band-Aid over it's not gonna heal it. And that's the same thing when we're talking about going through our own pain, our own traumas, our own history, and so forth, hiding the real truth of what happened, not disclosing and digging into the roots of it. You won't know that that's a broken bone because you won't get the CAT scan. And so how do we heal? And I wanna throw that there because as we're saying some of the stuff, you might get a little bit uncomfortable. You might be like, "This episode ain't for me," and then you start hearing certain things and then be like, wait, wait." You might wanna turn it off, but I'm asking you to push through it.
Mhm.
I'm asking you to
This
push.
is a deep one.
Yeah,
Mm, one.
because, like, you might be sitting there saying, like, "It felt like everything was fine on the surface," but when you really look about into some things, you, one, realize there's some things we don't talk about, we kinda hide.
Mm.
We recognize it's different than other folks. I think one of the big ones for me is, like, me and Ashley talked about this on the episode. The term they talk about is like, do you have a room child or a common area child? And basically what they're talking
Mm.
about is that common area children are the children that, like, when they come home, they like being in the living room, they like being in the kitchen, they like being in your office, they like being everywhere. Why? Because they feel comfortable around you. They feel like it's a safe space around them. And they feel like, I can be myself. This is cool. But those room children, those children, then if they're home, they are straight in their room. They are locking the door. It is hard to get them out. And not all the time, because sometimes we go through phases as teens, Lord knows. But the concept talks about how, because a lot of times it feels like I can't come out my door because you're gonna nag me. You're gonna criticize me. I'm gonna just be sitting there minding my business, and it's gonna be, you ain't gonna run some laps or nothing. No, you look at the chat there, nothing. You still cute. You still cute. I'm just in those type of little nitpicky things. That makes a
Mhm.
kid want to be like, you know what?
That's so interesting you say that because I know, like, growing up, I was a room child
I
and
was a
I
room
wanted to
child
be.
too. So yeah, today we're diving into a topic that cuts deep for many of us, especially those of us who have wondered, why does it feel like my childhood was kind of chaotic, even though everything seemed normal on the surface? Because as we are talking about emotionally immature parents, we're talking about the impact it has had on us as adults. So let's first break it down. Again, this topic is brought up by the book Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And this is written by Dr. Lindsay Gibson. And the way that she describes emotional immaturity is that emotionally immature parents aren't necessarily bad people or abusive people, or at least not in
Mhm.
obvious ways. In fact, like, the way that she describes it is that a lot of times they come off as very charming and successful. And sometimes it's hard for us to grapple with how we feel about them, how we feel about our childhood versus, like, but I know they're successful. I know she loved me. I know he took care of me and he was trying, but also there's still a lot of hurt. There's still a lot of resentment around them. And the issue is that with these parents, a lot of times they do love us and they did try, but they lack the emotional tools to truly be present and attend to their child's needs at that time. And what you find in a lot of times with emotionally immature parents is that instead of offering you like emotional support, they might have been preoccupied with their own dramas, their own anxieties, or their own feelings of inadequacy. And unfortunately, that was then passed on to make it our problem.
Yeah.
And sometimes what it can feel like for you as a child at that time is it might feel like you were the parent at times in your childhood, or it might have felt like your mama or your dad's mood swing dictated the mood of the whole house.
Yeah.
I gotta walk on eggshells because somebody done pissed her off at work. I gotta walk on eggshells because daddy cheating again. Now it is all of our problems. It
Mhm.
those are the type of things that are that emotional immaturity, like straight up in action. And it's very confusing to you as a child because while these parents are providing for you physically and they're loving you and they're taking you places and they're doing things with you, it still kind of hurts because there also still seems to be a gaping hole emotionally. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the four types of emotionally immature parents that she breaks down in the book. Gabby, you want to start with the
Mhm.
first one?
Yep. So the first one is the emotional parent. These are drama queens and kings. They thrive on intensity and make every crisis about them. You know the type. Your bad day turns into their bad day, and suddenly you're comforting them. They need to be watched over and coddled. They're emotionally delicate, and everyone has to tend to their emotional whims.
Yeah, the emotional parent is always very interesting to me when I see this in action. Kind of how Gabby explained, these are the parents where everybody has to tend to their emotions. Everybody is so delicate around them, despite the fact that, like, I'm the child. And I've said this a few times, I say this all the time in sessions. The healthy way for adult child relationship should be is that the parents are supposed to grow around the children.
Mm,
And a
mm,
lot of
mm.
times with the emotional parent, what happens is the child learns how to grow around their parent instead.
This is a deep one. This is deep for me because I love how you said learn how to grow around their parents. And I think particularly this really resonated with my dad. I've never really considered him the emotional parent, but when he walks in the room, everybody's mood changes and it's like he's top dog. So no matter like how you're feeling, what you're going through, my feelings don't matter
Yeah.
because it's all about his feelings and what he says. And I never really understood that. So I found like myself like also coddling him like at a very young age, like
Mhm.
maneuvering myself to try to get him to give me the love that I thought I deserved. And what I realized is it made me like want his love,
Yeah.
but like kind of reject my mom in a sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it should have never been like that because my mom has never not loved me. And I know she loves me. Where him, it made me be like, why won't you give it to me like I want it? So I'm gonna do what I have to do to get it. And you should never have to be like that with any relationship, any
Yeah.
relationship. So, as I got older and went to therapy, we worked through a lot of these feelings. And I never really realized that, but I've never really considered him the emotional parent, but
Yeah.
I
I
do
think
now.
with and I do think with some of the other parents that can also happen as well. When I think of the emotional parent, I especially like as children, I think or how it
Mhm.
affects us as children and how it affects us as adult is a lot of
Yeah.
times you end up being I would not be surprised if a lot of people who are in the mental health profession had an emotional parent because a lot of times you end up being a person who becomes very good with getting in tune with other people's feelings. You know how to pick up on how other people feel. You're very good at
Easily.
observing little things. You're the friend who, like, when everybody else is laughing, is noticing that that friend ain't laughing as much. You notice that friend's been very fidgety. You're noticing that she's kind of walking behind the group a little bit more. You are
Mhm.
the person who becomes very good at picking on being hyper vigilant about other people's feelings and their emotional doing, and you know how to tap into that.
I agree. I think that's one of my strong suits.
Girl, same,
Like
same.
I'm really, really, really good at reading like people's emotions, even though I have my own problems, set my feelings aside and really pick up on other people's energy and really just like listen. I never thought I'd be that person, but yeah, just
Like
like you're like,
whenever people
and
ask,
you're like that too.
mhm.
You are because I feel like you pick up on my energy all the time, especially when I'm just not feeling it. You'll be like, Gabby, what's wrong? For rest. Like I just don't like feel like it.
Well, but you know what? Even with me, when people are like, "Oh my gosh, what made you become a therapist?" Being a therapist at 5. That has literally the role I was assigned at a very young age. If
Mhm.
anything, probably healing for me is for me to stop doing therapy, if I'm being honest. Like, let me to take off that role. That's probably what healing
Oh
looks like. When I
man.
find another way to pay my bills.
And you know what? I'll say this too. I think I became that person because growing up at a very young age, especially, like, dealing with my dad's side when I would go there for summers and stuff like that. Nobody was that for me. I was always that for everybody, like, from my grandma to my cousins to, like, my brother to, like, sometimes listen to my dad and his problems, like,
Yeah.
and but the moment I say, like, "I'm feeling like this," they're like, "Girl, ain't nobody got time to listen to that.
Well,
You're okay." So
I
it's interesting.
but I wanna touch on that because bringing it back to, like, how it affects us now, I think, again, like, yes, you end up being a person who's very empathetic, but I also think it's a big part of, like, why a lot of times people, I think, who grow up with the emotional parent end up in relationships where they're doing most of the emotional labor. They end up in friendships where they end up doing most of the emotional labor. Why? Because I feel comfortable in bonds with people who are emotionally reactive, and I
Mhm.
have to be the diffuser. I have to be the person who picks up on that. I have to be the like, I'm not used to my needs being met in that way, but I
Yeah.
know how to meet people, and so you meet these people and you feel comfortable. And then not only that, even sometimes when you're meeting healthy folks, you go into that role because that's what kept me safe. Being
Yeah.
able to pick up on other people's emotions, being able to know like, "Ooh, they feeling there's a switch in the air. Let me let me figure out what it is. Let me figure out how to grow around them." It is something that kept you very safe
Mhm. You ever call somebody to have a conversation and it's supposed to be about you and the whole conversation is about them, but you're like,
most of the time.
"I'm just
Most of the
I
time. I It is a constant thing. It is a constant thing. Girl, I can't tell you how many friendships I had to cut off this year, and not
Mhm.
all of them, but I would say at least half of them, it was because of that. I was just like, I got too much stuff happening from this year. This year is going really fast for me. I'm having a lot of changes this year. I can't also be your therapist for free. I got I got a caseload of like 70 people right now. I can't add you in for the free. Like I need reciprocity. And I now
Yes,
realize our whole friendship is just I'm like free therapy with cocktails for you. And that's not what I want.
that's not what I want. Yeah, I definitely feel you on that.
I know you do. A particular person came to mind when you said that.
I
I was like,
know,
oh.
I know, I know.
Look, I had to cut off a friendship with a person earlier this year because um I can tell you everything that was going on with this person's marriage. I can tell you everything that's going on with their relationship with their mother. I can tell you what's going on at their job. I can tell you what's going on there with their mental health. Like, I don't think that person could not tell you. I don't think that person could tell you why I left my job. I don't think that person could tell you anything about my love life. And I know I'm secretive about my love life, but like just common basic things. I don't think that person can tell you anything about anything that has happened to me this year. Why?
Well, that sucks for them because they missed out on learning something new about you every day. Like every combo, I learned something new about
Person.
you. I'm like,
All types of clues and agendas, all types of stuff happening. They don't get to know that. Why? Because 5 seconds into every conversation we have ever had, they have stopped, interrupt me to make sure that we make it back about them. But also, some of that is my fault because I allowed it. Why? Because I'm used to tending to the needs of freaking others, but not no
so
more.
annoying.
Still somewhere I get paid to do it. But, when it comes to this, I think one of the biggest things is like, okay, how do we start working on healing this? And you got to recognize that one, that parent's emotional reactions, one, it doesn't define your worth. And
I
that
learned that the hard way.
you are more than your role as the caretaker, as the rescuer, as the enabler, as the golden child. Whatever your role is that you had to play to survive, understanding that you are more than that, and then start setting boundaries with them.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Allow your feelings to take up space. It don't have to always
Amen.
be about them. Yeah. And we're probably going to touch on a little bit more when we get to a different number of the parents, the rejecting parent. But I do want to just briefly put in here like, and it's okay to understand if sometimes a boundary means you are no longer allowed in my life.
That
And
part,
also understand, though, that should not be your first automatic go to.
it should
In
not.
certain special circumstances, there are certain things that people can do that, yeah, automatically. I myself, and I'll talk a little bit about this as we go through the different types, but like I have two fathers, and both of them Negroes. Both of them Negroes combined is like half of my therapy, um, throughout the years. But like one of them I love and I work with, and I have to work on our boundaries and I have to work on communicating, and we have to like put in work for our relationship. And I
Mhm.
believe putting in work for the relationship for him is worth it. And I have one of my other father who I do not talk to. I did not talk to that man. I think it's been 5 years since I last talked to that man. And I told that man, I'm not talking to you. And I told him why I was not talking to him. Laid it out for him. Hey, this is why. This is who you are. And you also don't see a problem with this. You want to have contact with me, you want to have contact with my children. And sometimes you might have to do that, but you have to decide what is healthy for you, what is worth it for you, and what is not.
Mhm.
But especially with the emotional parent, the thing is, learn how to let your emotions take up space and room too, and not to get engulfed in theirs. Some of that
And
is boundaries.
say that twice for the people in the back, 'cause that's deep. Sorry.
I don't even remember what I said, but some of it is boundaries. And some of it is, again, not taking on their mood, not understanding your job is not to police their mood, understanding your job is not to coddle their mood, understand that you are the child and not the parent. And so it is not your responsibility to grow around them. And it's hard. It's hard to set up that new dynamic. Again, I have a parent who I work hard with to set up this new dynamic of like, again, you having a bad day ain't got nothing to do with me. I've talked about this on the show. Like one of my dads used to do a thing, like when he was mad at me, he would just take his love away from me. He would just not talk to me. I would see this man sit on the couch and would not talk to me for days as punishment, and then would tell me, okay, I'm talking to you now. That was for blah 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 blah." Like he knew he was doing it. It was very intentional. And as an adult, I had to talk to him about that. And I told him, like, to me, it felt like you were withholding your love. And when you did that, it made me feel like I'm only lovable when I had to perform acts to receive your love. And I was like, do you know what that does to a child? Not only do you know what that does to a child, do you know what that does to a female child when the male figure they look up to does that? Do you know the type of issues that can cause for a child around love? And of course, for him, it wasn't that. And in this particular father, he grew up with extremely emotionally unavailable parents. He grew up with abusive parents. He's
Mm.
and so for him, he didn't see it as that way. For him, he really thought he was doing better because he's like, I ain't never put my hands on my kids. My kids didn't grow up to become adults that still have marks from when they were 5.
Never putting your hands on your kid, that doesn't mean you.
And yeah, and we had to have that talk. And I'm like, I hear you. I get it. Your head are like, I'm doing a good job because I'm not doing that. However, unfortunately, that taught you how to do psychological warfare on your children.
Yep.
And that's harmful too.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
let's move on to one of the other types of emotionally immature parents that she talks about. The next one that she talks about in the book is the driven parent. Now, so like these are the parents who are usually successful. These are the parents and they value success. They value achievement, productivity over feelings and like emotions. Now,
Mhm.
love is shown, but it almost feels like love is shown through expectations. And like when you don't meet these expectations, oh, it's a problem. They might withdraw their love. They might be highly critical. They might be a little bit mean. They might almost feel like your worst bully. They have this kind of idea of like, I know what's best for you. And
Mhm.
the thing is, our kids are kids. That attitude is almost like promoted. And don't get me wrong, there are certain things that like my child wants to be a YouTuber. And I'm like, no, you're not going to be exposed to the world in that way. Because when you think YouTube, you think you making these little videos and people are going to love you and praise you. As an adult, I know fame comes with criticism. I know that blowing up means you're also going to get people that say very negative things. I also know that, all these little things that, there are certain things that we know better as adults because we have more experience and we have a little bit more knowledge. But with the driven parent, even when you're an adult, it's this my way because my way is better than your ways. They're big on pushing their agenda on their children and ignoring their child's individuality, and knowing that
Mhm.
you are different than me. And so I have to parent you different. I can't have the same expectations because I am a numbers person. I'm a business person. You are an artist. You like beauty. You like art. You love love, not war. I'm up here. You telling me that little girl was mean with you. I'm like, kick her ass. And you're like, mommy, I just want to be loving and kind to folks. This is that I parent you through my expectations of self.
Mhm.
And what I expect from myself, I expect from you. These children tend to grow up feeling very evaluated or feeling like their parents were very critical. And a lot of times I feel like these parents are more worried about how things look to others and not necessarily putting too much into how it feels for the child.
I like that. The driven parent. Um, Not to say my mom didn't value success, but I didn't have a driven parent. I was really blessed to like have like a parent who let me explore. Like I really stayed in a magical world growing up. Like I low key still watch magical shows. Like
Mhm.
don't judge me, but I do. Like I stay in a very magical realm. Vampires, werewolves, trolls. Oh my,
All
that's
that.
me. Like
Mhm.
I've always been like that. And so both of my parents, they care how they look. They're into fashion, like name brand fashion, Louis Vuitton, all that.
Mhm.
Me, straight up sweatpants, hair tied, chilling with my hair just like this, unbothered, because
Word.
I really don't care. And so I didn't have those expectations pushed on me like that. I was able to really express myself freely, even when it came to expressing myself. Some people, like I think with the driven parent, there's no room for you to kind of move and express yourself. It's just kind of like my way or the highway. I didn't have that. I didn't have that at all. Like if I did not feel something was right, especially like now on my dad's side, I express myself a lot, but on my mom, with my mom, I'm like, I remember one time telling her, like, I was so upset. I don't even remember what it was, but she had made me so mad one time. And I like was practicing in my room what I was gonna say to her. And I had told her that she's like Trump, and I had told her that this house is not a democracy.
Lord.
She was like, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I was just like,
I
I
pay
didn't
the bills.
prepare
You're
for
right. This is not a
right.
democracy.
I didn't prepare for what to say after that because I
Yeah.
wasn't prepared.
Yeah.
So like there's just those little things, but the driven parent's interesting because I do feel like there's no room for you to kind of express yourself. And to be honest, I know this sounds bad what I'm about to say, but I think the driven parent can cause those anxieties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the driven parent, I think a lot of times these are children that grow up very anxious. And
Mm,
these are children that grow into adults that are very anxious and are very focused and worried about validation from others because
yeah.
that's how you receive love from the parent. And it's not some of these parents do, I do think, do it on purpose, but it's not like that was their purpose. And this is one going back to what I talked about earlier with the Cosby parents. I think this is something that I see a lot with people whose parents like grew up in a hood and like made it out. Especially like if your parents the bougie auntie, your parent is the bougie cousin. This I think is something that can sometimes happen because it is me and my seed because we different. I ain't like them. We up here working hard. And so it's like, I see you as an extension of myself. And so you need to imitate what I do. You need to be as excellent as I am. You need to be as excellent as I am to the outside world. And so it creates a lot of issues. And I've had conversations with people about this before. And I think this is something I struggled with growing up in my early 20s, as well as I had a certain idea of what type of woman I was expected to be. And so I would follow all these little rules, these little checklists of like, okay, I'm going to go to school. And I'm like, not only go to school, I'm going to get my master's. Not only am I going to get my master's, I'm going to get me an office with a view. I don't know why. When I was in my 20s, that was such a big thing for me. I don't want no cubicle. I need an office with a view. And let me say, I did get that office with a view. That drove me fucking crazy. That's the job I actually walked out of. I had an office downtown Atlanta, and we have
Mm.
like this big Ferris wheel, and I could see the Ferris wheel from my office. I used to take all these pretty pictures when I was right before I was having like a mental breakdown, crying underneath my desk. I would first take a pretty picture from my office view,
Be like that.
and then I would go and close my door and just have a mental breakdown. Um, But yeah, because it's this I am this extension of self, and you feel like everybody expects me to be as smart as them. Everybody expects me to be as successful as them. Everybody expects me, dang, when my mom was my age, she already had a house and she had a car and she was a director and I was blah blah blah. And it creates
Mhm.
all this because it wasn't a lot of room about what do you want to be. That's okay. You and okay, and that's not to say, yo, baby, like work at Subway to not like encourage, like, okay, but like let's have a backup plan because you might not be able to afford what you want to do on Subway salary. You
Right.
can have encouragement, but still allow them to have a sense of self. And I think one of the biggest things with the driven parents is that a sense of self is not really developed in the childhood
Yeah.
because it's not encouraged.
Yeah.
And a lot
I
of
agree.
times what you see is the people that grow up in this have this wake up moment where they in their 20s, they in their 30s, they in their 40s, where they wake up and they like, I did everything by the books and I'm miserable. Now what? I was told this is what I was supposed to be happy now. I got the job, I got the husband or the wife, I got the 2.5 kids, I got the really nice car, I got the important title. Why aren't I happy? This is what you told me to do, and I'm miserable. And it's because it was never
Miserable.
encouraged for you to be self. And this
That's
one, I
fact.
think, is one of the parents, the emotionally immature parents, that is hard to see and pick out because when I'm encouraging you to do certain things, it comes off as just good old parenting. They want you
Mhm.
to have good grades. They want you to be successful. And these aren't things that are inherently bad. But again, it's always like, okay, but are you doing it at the cost of who I actually am? Are you doing it at the
Right.
cost of my emotional health?
That's deep.
Like I am a first gen child. So my immigrant children, I want y'all to focus in on that one. No, it's not. I got some great parents, but some of us, let's have a support group. Okay, let's meet on Thursdays after 5 and let's cry together. Um,
So, how do you heal? So, separate your idea of success from your sense of self. You're not just a list of achievements they might not have told you, but you're valuable just as you are. So, when I think of that, I think I always back especially in my 20s, I was a writer, so I wrote everything down. My
mhm,
my goals, what how I see myself, what I wanted to do. And I can give a very good example. So I never wanted to be a social worker. Everybody knows that. Wasn't not in my
mhm,
plans. Um I actually went to the same college as my mother.
mhm,
And some of her professors actually were my professors.
mhm.
Crazy. So I did that for my undergrad, and my mom also got her master's at the same college. It's just what I thought. I was like, oh, like it's an honor, like to go to the same college my mom went to. It took my counselor, school counselor,
Mhm.
you do your little sheet when you go
Yeah,
into the master's program, whatever. It took her to be like, Gabby, do something different. Go to a different school. Like you don't have to walk in your mom's footsteps. Like you can go do something different.
yeah,
And it's like I needed that permission. I don't
yeah,
know why I needed that permission, but it's like I need that permission. And it's crazy because I remember being a CNA at that time. And I remember applying for Clark Atlanta, and I remember
mhm,
applying for Howard. And so I remember making that decision and being like, this is what I want to do. And I have a very supportive mom who is my support system. And she sat up with me writing essays, doing college applications, like doing this whole process. And she thought it was amazing. Like, okay, this is what you want to do. Let's do it.
yeah,
Even though like anxiety and stuff like that, like I remember and she has always encouraged me to follow what I want to do.
yeah,
And I think that has given me the strength, like even now at 33, revamping myself, like realizing there's more to social work. I am glad that she did tell me to get into social work and not just get a little general degree
mhm,
because social work has opened so many doors for me and there's so many positions that you don't have to do that social work. So I'm blessed because of that. But my path definitely has been different in this realm of social work. And I think it's because it's almost like I've been given permission to do that.
I think for myself, one of the things I had to do for me with regards to like healing, just feeling the need to, yeah, heal the idea that my success is who I am.
Yeah.
My work, my production is a part of like what makes me me. Is one, I had to rewrite my story about who I am. I think
Mhm.
for a long time I was good at being like, I'm Russ. I have 2 degrees. I'm a master's degree. I am a therapist. I am a clinician. I am a this. I used to have this one job title. It's too specific for me to say, but it was like one of those job titles that sounds so important. And it sounds like when I had this job, people used to always be like, oh, it's so fascinating. Tell me more about it. Oh my gosh. Do you talk to murderers? Oh my gosh, you interview them? Like it
I
was
know
like,
exactly what you're talking about. I had to
yeah.
think about it, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's so crazy because like for like 60% of that job was me doing paperwork and notes. Like it was me pushing paperwork. But like I had to matter of fact, when I left that job was a big part of that because I have no backup plan again. I was just so
So
over
did
it.
leave.
And I was in the middle of like a depressive episode as well. Like it was bad. And a part of like some of my healing is I had to ask myself like, okay, who are you outside of what you do? Who are you outside of your daughter's mother? Who are you? And like, because every time I kept saying like who I am, I kept going back to things that I did. And so I had to
Mhm.
rewrite my story, like, who are you? And I had to like, okay, outside of that, who am I? Okay, I am a really empathetic, nurturing spirit who wiles out sometimes. Okay. Okay, let's start with that. Cool. What else are you? And I had to like take back who is Rest. I had to rewrite who was Rest because my whole script was just like, I am educated. And this is the reasons why I am worth something. I am a productive member of society. And this is the reason why I'm worth something. And I had to take that away from myself in order to really allow myself the freedom to feel like I did not need the validation of all these outside things that were stressing me to
Right.
feel like I was valid as a human being, that I was worthy as a human being. I had
Mm.
to remind myself that I was so much more than my list of achievements. I had to convince myself, like, why? Okay, because I'm more than that. Why are you more than that? I bring other value. How do you bring other value? Like I had to bring yourself out, and I think that's going to be a big part of this is separating yourself from this idea of I am just my list of achievements. I am just my list of success, and I need to be on guard about all the criticisms that could be thrown my way. So what's another one of
So,
your house?
so the passive parent. These parents take the back seat in the family dynamics. They let other people, like a more dominant parent, even or even you, handle the big emotions and decisions. They're physically but emotionally checked out. They can seem like a safe parent at times, but they allow a more dominant parent to make life hell without a fight. They are known for turning a blind eye. So when you think about the passive parent, they just checked out. They ain't got nothing to say to you. Like they just, it's like, you can go out and if you're 15, spend all day at 3 a.m. in the morning, do whatever it is that you want to do. I don't care. And I'll let the other parent get on you because I don't have nothing to say. It's so interesting because I think of like the parent who has like wine and it's just so unbothered. Like just has a bottle of wine and it's just like, what are you doing? Oh,
Oh,
you're gonna go do this? Okay.
Helga Pataki's mother and Hey Arnold.
Very unbothered, very passive.
Can
You're
I
like,
give a damn about what's going on in that little girl's life?
she did not
Where
care. There was one time she
stay
did
with a
step
bottle
up.
of pills and something
Look,
in her cup.
she did step up when they had to get that money to get back home and they was in that cowgirl and she had to ride that horse. She did step up, but there was one time we seen Helga's mother step. Other than that, Helga's mother ain't got much to say at all. Very true. Very good. Excellent point. So the passive parent, they just don't really have much to say. I think they um, haven't got over their own trauma or still working through their trauma that they don't really have time to deal with you.
And I'll give a flip side of the passive parent because also sometimes the passive parent, they're also seen as like the hero parent if you grow up in an abusive household.
Mm,
Because this is the parent who doesn't abuse you, but they still allow the abuse to happen.
yeah.
Now, they might also be a victim of the abuse, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they know the other parent is hitting on y'all, is neglecting y'all, and they say nothing, but they seem like the safer parent because at least they don't do it. And they might
Mm.
coddle you, and they might hug you, they might kiss up on you, and they might kiss your boo-boos afterwards, but they still allow it. A lot of times with the passive parent, they're so checked out that they are a falsehood of safety. because they
Yep.
actually do nothing to keep you safe and make you safe. But because they are there and they are not as reckless as the other parent, um, they get kind of like gold stars and gold cool points for at least not causing more harm. And but the thing is, by not stepping in to protect the child, by not stepping in and being a more active, engaged parent, you are still causing harm.
Very much so. A
Uh,
lot of harm.
mhm. And one of the things they kind of talked about in the book with this particular type of parent is like, also, this parent sometimes might kind of like playing the role of the passive parent because it's like it gives them someone to look up, like they're the one that is kind of like looked up to, like they're the children's center around them without them having to do too much.
It's like
Like,
less responsibility.
yeah, and we're talking about abuse because usually a lot of times I think we're talking about passive parents, we are seeing like a lot of abuse and stuff. But sometimes it's
Mhm.
turning a blind eye to their responsibilities. Kind of like with the Helga G Pataki. Bob, I personally feel like Bob is emotionally abusive, but we never see him actually hit on the children. All right.
His
But
voice, it was very loud, very yeah.
but he
Like
was always yelling. He was always critical. He was
he was
always like,
always, yeah.
yeah, unforgiving. Um, so like that's an instance where he was not like physically violent and so forth, but like think about like how that impacted like Helga. Like so she grew to be bossy, manipulative to others her age. And her mom just kind of turned a blind eye to both. You see that he treats her different than her older sister. And you just kind of, that's not my problem because I don't want to get caught up in his stuff. And I think sometimes with the passive parent, that is a big part of that dynamic. It's I don't want to get caught up in any more of the other parent's stuff. And
Mm.
so it's kind of like I'm saving myself instead of saving.
They don't even allow you like any space to like vent. Like you can vent to them and you'll get nothing. You'll be like, like this happened and school happened. And they're just like,
You know how he
well,
is.
you'll be okay. You'll get through it and just
Just, just listen to what he said.
and
Maybe
you know,
just try
I'll say
harder.
this. My dad's also a very passive person and he's a very passive parent. And I can say a lot of that side of the family is too, because I can vent and they'll be like, you know how he is, or you'll
Mhm.
get used to it, or he's been this way and he's not going to change. You know, those are things that you really don't want to hear growing up, or those are things you're just like, people are supposed to like, I'm all for change. And I've really sincerely believe people, I don't say people can change. I believe people grow,
Yeah.
but I do know after a certain age, you just kind of are just who you are gonna be, you know. So being very passive and it just sucks because I can remember venting and being like this da 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 or this happened and I just it made me like kind of go mute on him and he'll be like, oh, Gabby doesn't talk to me, but when I talk to you, you have nothing to say, like
Hmm.
nothing, not even a thing, not even can't even nothing
Yeah.
and those are I think those are the hardest parents to make connections with because it makes you really feel like you have nothing in common with this person. Like you're just like, okay, like
Or they teach
I
you to
don't
live in fear. Not so much with
yeah,
your thing, but it's like if you're a
yeah.
passive, I see you just let everything roll by and you are my example of safety, then you are teaching me to just let other people bulldoze over me. And
Hmm.
as long as I don't rock the boat too much, then that's safety.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty
One thing
much.
I can say is like, and I have a great co-parent. I got lucky. I got a great co-parent. That first year though, that first year that we broke up, it was not great. It was not great. But we are great now. We are really great co-parents, but we do parent very, very differently. And like, it's really big for me to make sure I let my daughter know, like, and he's the same. Like, you can come to me. It's a safe place, and I will get shit done. I will get
Yeah.
you have an issue, I will get shit done. Earlier today, again, I took my daughter to one of the fairs that was here. And I was like trying to encourage her to get on like a bigger kid ride. Because she doesn't really do roller coasters, but like also I don't really do roller coasters. At her age though, I was more into it. And there was like this really big roller coaster. And I was like, well, do you want to try it? She was like, no. And she was like crying. And I was like, why are you crying? I'm not going to force you to do it. She was like, but daddy says I have to try new things and that I'd be letting fear stop me.
I
And
mean, if you know this, then
but so I'm telling her, and I was like, I mean, no, daddy's right that we do sometimes let fear stop us and it stops us from really great things. I was like, but baby, you're shaking over something you don't have to do. And she was like, no,
yeah.
because daddy would be so mad. And I was like, yo, I was like, girl, yo, first of all, your daddy's here and I will fight your daddy. And in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have said that. I like to think my child knows my
Right.
humor. I like to think my child knows because every now and then she'll say those things like, we'll be doing something. She's like, but daddy said, I'm like, and who, and what's your daddy gonna do to me? But no, we had this moment. She was like, "No, because daddy says I need to try stuff." And I was like, "Baby, you're shaking." I was like, "This is more so about like when you want to go out for cheerleading, but you don't want to because you don't know anybody on the squad.
Yeah.
And we want to encourage you to like, no, go and
Oh,
live, do the things you want to do." And so like I'm like trying to convince her, and she was just like, "No, because my dad." And I had to be like, "Girl, okay," and tell him he ain't here, and you can tell him I said no. And you can tell him, I was like, you want me to call? And that's my homeboy. We kick it. He my cousin. He like not like kissing cousins, but like that's a big dog. That's a little dog. I'm
yeah.
a big dog. So like it wasn't like animosity, but like it is important for a child to know that they have a parent that has their back.
Mhm.
And he does the same. Because sometimes he'll
And
call and he'll just be like,
I
hey,
I think
she
it's
said you can't do that. Can you please tell her that this is my house? And I was like, I technically don't have rain over there, baby. You right.
you
That's
over
your house.
there.
I guess y'all can have 2 pounds of seafood boil. I wouldn't recommend it, but okay.
I love that she's able to, express herself when it comes to you, right? I definitely get that. So I'm glad that she's able to, express those feelings. Like he would want me to push myself, but I really don't want to, but I will. And that's good. That's a good space to be in. Like you can, but you don't have to. And
Mhm.
I like how you come at it. Like you can, but you don't have to do that. Now.
But yeah, and I think when going back to like with the passive parent, one good tip when it comes to healing this is like understanding that their lack of involvement again wasn't about you. And a lot of
Mhm.
times that it was a way to keep themselves safe. They are usually are in situations or in a point or in their life where like I have also found a lot of passive parents are like just people who are unhappy with their life and they've given up and they've given up on everything. And so they don't do much anywhere. They don't do much at their job. They don't do much in their marriage. They don't do much in their friendships and they don't do much in their parenting. And it's not about you. It's about their lack of wanting to give it a go. And it sucks that it has now become it or it did become your problem too.
Yep.
But that was their issue. It was not yours. And I think when we're talking about this as an adult, to heal past this, learn how to seek out relationships that are nurturing and a relationship with people who engage with you emotionally, because that's one of the big things that is missing when we're talking about the passive parents. They're not necessarily nurturing, they're just there. They're not really
Yeah.
engaging with you emotionally, they're just there. They're not really protective, they're just not harmful. And so recognize if you are repeating these patterns in your life. Are you creating bonds with people romantically, friendship wise, where they are just there? They're not adding any benefits. And you're like, well, as long as they're not hurting me, that's good enough. It's not, you deserve more.
Mhm. Mm.
So the last one that we have, Dr. Gibson talks about in her book, is the rejecting parent. Now, this is one that I think a lot of us will be more familiar with. And this is one that's really tough because these are the parents that are outright dismissive, critical, or straight up avoidant. They reject you sometimes physically by just refusing to be a part of your life, refusing to engage with you, refusing to step up and be a parent at all. Or they reject your emotions. It feels like, damn, I really think they would be perfectly fine if I didn't even exist.
Girl, speak that word.
They are the parent that lives their life revolving around their own needs and their own wants. And
Mhm.
you being their child and you having needs does not cross their mind.
Does not matter. Does not even
Yeah.
matter.
I think a lot of us are more familiar with the rejecting parent because usually when you talk about
Agreed.
emotionally immature parent, I think this is the one that typically comes to mind for folks. This is the one who didn't show up to graduation. This is the one who doesn't know your birthday. This is the
Mhm.
one who in childhood he didn't know what grade I was in. He don't know how old she don't know how old I am. This was the one who just are self-centered, really. It's about them.
Yep.
And every now and then they remember they have a child and it's like, oh, okay.
Or they just don't remember at all. It's definitely fine. Either or. The reject parent's so interesting because I definitely resonate with this. I definitely resonate with this. And I think one thing that I love about my mom is she definitely is a very realistic person.
Mhm.
She straight up told me when I got older to really understand. So I can say like in my teenage years, because this is when I kind of was really rebelling against my dad because I just didn't understand. She told me, Gabby, being a parent is optional. Never understood that
Yeah.
till I got in my 20s, but it's
Mm.
true. You can have children, but you do not have to be a parent. You don't have to be. And some people choose not to be. Some people choose to be there 100% and raise their kids like they're excellent. Some people choose to be there halfway. Some people choose not to be there at all. And I'm not saying either way is okay, but for the person who rejects their children, it's okay with them. And you'll never get that validation that you need because they just really don't care.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's it's just what it is. And I never really understood that until I got older because it really resonated with me and my situation with my father because I just never could understand why he acts the way he acts, especially when you're like, I know he can build relationships because he's been married and they had a daughter and they helped with them. I know he can build relationships because he has relationships and you just can never understand why it can never be with you.
Yeah.
And when, thank God, like, well, yeah, thank God, I went through a lot of therapy and dealt with this, and I didn't realize like a lot of my actions came out from being having a rejected or being rejected from a parent. So
Hmm.
I had to really work through a lot of my own traumas. But at the end of the day, I realized that I learned to realize that it's nothing of my own doing.
Yeah.
And I think growing up that we blame ourselves for this
Yeah.
because we don't understand why you don't love us or why you don't like us. And it does affect us in a different way. You're like, I don't understand. Like, what did I do to you? All I did was come out the womb. I didn't ask to be here. Right.
You brought up an interesting point that I really want us to expound on because sometimes with the rejecting parent, the thing is they're not rejecting to all of their children. And that's actually incredibly harmful when you are the child that gets the rejected parent and then you see them be a good parent to other children. I have a sibling who we had this conversation before. Um,
Mhm.
they got the rejecting side of my father, and I didn't get the rejected side. And of course, as I get older, I also realized the reason I didn't get the rejected side is because I learned very early on, oh, you have to earn his love. He will take it away. If you don't follow his rules, he won't love you. And so I just learned
Yeah.
to be really obedient and anxious and depressed.
Mhm.
But I learned to be very obedient and anxious. And my sibling hadn't figured that out. And for them, even though we both have some kind of pains and hurts when it comes to this particular parent, ours are very different. And
Yeah.
they were almost kind of like mad at me because they're like, also, how dare you have issues with him because you were the golden child. And I had to break it down to them like, oh no, I was the performing child. I had to earn that love. I had to put on acts. I had to learn tricks. Like it wasn't, but for them, because of what they saw, all they saw was like, oh, they step up and go to your events. Oh, they
Mhm.
step up and they interact with you. I feel like I am an irritation to them.
Mhm.
I feel like I am bothering them by wanting to love them.
Mhm.
And it is so hurtful because I think having a rejecting parent is hurtful in general, but to see that you're capable. It's one thing if you're rejecting and I'm like, this is who that parent is, and they just can't, and
Right.
it's frustrating. But then to figure out or learn or see, oh, wait, no, you are able and you are purposely choosing not to be a parent to me, a good, healthy parent to me. And you're
It's
choosing to be one to someone else. What does that do to my self esteem as a child?
it's true.
I am of
I'm
your
gonna
blood. I look like you, and you
that
are
part.
rejecting me.
I'm gonna expand on that because I do have a brother, but people don't know. I am a raised as an only child, but you know, that man does have a son who is my older brother. I'm actually the baby. And if you ask my brother, him and my father, they have a really good relationship.
Mhm,
Talk all the time. My brother has a son and a daughter, and I love them to death. Like he's excellent father. Like
mhm,
father of the year. He definitely gives his kids what we did not get. And it's interesting because I can remember when my brother went to go live down there with them and with him and his wife and their daughter went to go live down there with them. And then when it came to me and I had to go stay down there for a year, I lived with my grandma. I didn't get the option to live with him. So I can remember like birthdays, him taking me and my brother's birthdays are 2 days apart,
mhm.
him taking my brother to go get clothes, shoes, take him to his birthday. My brother going even for summers. My brother going to a really expensive camp, all that. And then there was me. I didn't get anything for my birthday, but a DNA test, and I got the Raggedy Ghetto camp. Like like I can remember these little things. Like I never was treated with the same love or affection like he gave my brother. Where me, it was just like Kanye shrug, like
Yeah,
straight Kanye attitude. And so and you learn that, one thing I can say is my grandma, she literally tried to pick up what my father was not putting down. Like I literally told my mom this the other day, I was like, it probably would have benefited me if I never would have met them at all in my life. And she was like, but she was close to my grandmother. And so
mhm,
this is how the relationship kind of happened because if it was up to my father, I probably would not know them.
yeah,
I probably would not. And I'm not saying I would have been okay with it because it probably would have affected me in a different way too. But it probably would have saved me from the rejection also because I would have been older and I wouldn't have known them. So it wouldn't have hurt me as much as it kind of hurt me growing up. Like
yeah,
growing up and being rejected is definitely not where it's at because you find yourself. I've found, and I'll say this, and this is why love is a big thing. You end up trying to find love in the wrong places. And I can say I tried to find love in the wrong places because of the love that was rejected towards me. And you think that that's the kind of love that you deserve.
mhm,
That's how you see your worth. Having a rejected parent is, to me, in my opinion, probably the one of the worst ones because there's nowhere to go.
yeah,
They don't fuck with you. They don't mess with you. They don't love you. They don't do nothing.
yeah. You a lot of times grow up to struggle with asking for what you want because you're used to be feeling like a bother. And not all the times, but a lot of times, and she talks about this in the book, is that if the person who I am told is supposed to love me, and I'm seeing other people whose parents love them and so forth, makes me feel like they are irritated with my love, then I
Mm-hmm.
will always approach love on tiptoes. I
Yep.
will always approach love like I am just glad that you're allowing me to be here. I am thankful to you and thank you for tolerating me. And that can be hard,
Mm-hmm.
hard to get out of. And when we're talking about like healing around this is really going to, again, focus on building self compassion and focus on learning how to validate yourself. Focus on making sure that you understand that your love is not a bother
Mm-hmm. Very true.
and recognizing that as your kind of like your red flag, time for me to leave. If I feel myself having to walk on tiptoes to receive love from this person, telling yourself, this is not normal, this is my sign to go. And not telling yourself, well, this is what it is to find love for me. This is what love is for me. No, it is not. This is might have been what you're used to, but this is not what you deserve.
Yep.
Now, so like one of the key takeaways from Dr. Gibson's book is that the emotional unavailability you experience probably had you feeling like invisible, misunderstood, and for some people, even like emotionally stunted yourself. Many adult children, emotionally immature parents struggle with feelings of guilt, a lack of self worth, and a huge, deep fear of rejection. Now, in her book, again, we recommend you go and read the book for himself. We are not nearly touching on the gems that are in it. And again, this is not paid, Dr. Gibson. I ain't saying you gotta trick off, but I'm just saying. No, at least four of my clients this year have bought the book. Uh, but she has a lot of really good gems on it. Some of the key takeaways from her book is like, one, a lot of times when you grow up with any one of these four types, is that as an adult, you tend to grow up struggling with people pleasing because you spent so much
Mm-mm.
time managing your parents' emotions that you feel like I am responsible for other people's feelings. That feels comfortable for you. Constantly putting yourself last to appease other people. You might also struggle with emotional numbness. To protect yourself from like disappointments, you may learn how to shut down your emotions, making it hard for you to actually really connect with people on a deep level, especially if you find yourself being one of those people who I feel like I'm a friend to everybody, but no one's a friend to me. Because I'm good at picking up on other people's feelings. I'm good at picking up on other people's emotions, but because it feels so unusual for me to have people really care about me, get to know me, invest in me. That feels foreign. I just kind of shut down when I have those opportunities. I feel drained and used up. Relationships feel draining for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel beneficial. I don't know how y'all going out here having these relationships and y'all happy and stuff. I'd be happy for all about 5 minutes before it feels draining to me. And that's probably because, again, you learn how to emotionally numb. Oh, and I know I've said this before multiple times in a podcast, but again, I used to work to reduce recidivism rates for inmates, try to get them back out into society and in a way where they won't have to come back to jail. And one of the big things we had to take away and teach them was like, yo, the skills you learn to keep yourself safe in jail, you cannot take on the outside. That's how your ass get locked back up. But it's the same thing here. The skills that we had to learn to keep ourselves safe in unhealthy environments, you cannot take these into healthy environments and expect healthy things to happen. Now, the good news to all of this is you don't have to stay like this. None of this has to be a life sentence. You can recognize these patterns, take steps to break free for them. Some of those ways are by identifying what are these traits in your own life and recognizing those patterns. And she gives you some really good examples of what to do in a book. Some of it is reparenting yourself. And honestly, I just want to throw in here because I feel like whenever I bring up reparenting, people will be like, that's a load of crock. Just because I wanted a easy bake oven when I was 7, I never got it, and I get it now. It's supposed to make me feel better. Look, let me tell you right now, and you know, Gabby, because you're on my personal Instagram account. I've started coloring and drawing again.
Yeah.
Something I used to do when I was little, and I stopped. I can't tell you why I stopped. I don't feel like it was traumatic or anything like that, but I stopped. The reason I started again is because my daughter loves to color and she loves to draw and she loves to
I see
paint.
that you and homegirl be having coloring sessions.
We be having whole coloring sessions at least once a week now. She'll come down to my room or we'll go out on the porch and she'll bring out all the crayons and colors. And like I actually went out and bought us notebooks so we can like chart how good we're progressing over time. So instead of like
Mm.
little loose piece of paper that we get lost and end up throwing away, we got our own art books and we write the date on them. We sign our name like real artists. And it has been so liberating to me that like when I get stressed, that's now my go-to thing. And it
Hmm.
de-stresses me and it calms me down and it lets me tap into a side of me where it's like, no, remember creativity and fun. Because one of the things I realize is I need creativity in my life. I need to do things where I'm just expressing myself for
Yeah.
no other reason but because I want to express myself. I'm not
Hmm.
trying to sell it. I'm not trying to rate it. I'm not caring about how it looks to other people. It's literally just because I find it fun and helpful. And that is so important to me. And I do think that is something I lacked for a long time in my life, doing things just because they made me happy.
And sometimes you need that. I think One thing people don't tell you, well, I think we're social workers, so we know this, is you have to revamp your coping skills and find out who you are again, especially the older you
Bingo.
get. Like, it's just what it is. Like, the coping skills I had in my teens and my 20s definitely don't work in my 30s. So in my
Mhm.
30s, I have to, it's almost like I've had to relearn myself and who I am to keep myself from going under. And it's almost like a rewarding experience, but it's almost like a scary experience also, because it's like, oh my gosh, like I used to like this. Like, why don't I do this
Four
more? So
locals and walking over to Brothers on the levee don't work for you no more?
it's not work.
Did you used to walk over to Brothers on the levee in Covington?
I remember it does not work anymore. Like that's not. I'm still now. I'm even more
At
nervous
21, that was
and
my coping
anxious.
skill. They had $2 fire bombs and $1 Long Island iced teas. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You're right.
No,
Those
you're
are not our
good.
coping skills anymore.
You're good. Like coping skills is just different. The older you get, the more like you just have to learn new coping skills for yourself. And I think that's just you staying healthy and you staying innovative with you. One thing I've learned is we have to continue to grow because if not, we're going to be stuck.
I agree. And I think some of the other things that she touched upon that can really help with this is like, again, building an authentic self network, which is like surrounding yourself with emotionally mature people who offer you
Mhm.
genuine connection, who people who offer you validation and support. And this can look like friends, but this can also look like mentorships. This can also look like a therapist. This can look like supportive partners. The key to like engaging with these type of folks is a willingness to allow yourself to open up, connect deep,
Mhm.
not shut down. Only so much healing can happen in isolation. I know some people said no healing can happen in isolation. I'm not a believer in that. I do think there are some times where people can need to do some self reflection with self without the noise, without the outputs of others. For sometimes I do think you do need to sit with yourself, but it's limited. Healing is a community thing. And
It
trust
is.
me, I tell y'all this all the time. I am a big person who likes my own personal space and like my own
Me
personal
too.
time.
Me too.
I
But you only
love
can stay
me.
isolated so long.
Yeah, I love me. I love hanging with me. I am my favorite person. I am my second favorite person. My daughter's my favorite person. But like, even those of us who are those type of people who are like, I like my alone time. I don't really like folks like that. I get it, but you just have to find your tribe. And your tribe does not have to be big. Again, tribe is like four people deep.
It was my tribe is down to 3 people
Look,
and
Neek,
maybe a possible.
look. And it looks different for different folks. Neek's tribe is like 1,300 people. She gets so bad when I say that. But Neek has a bigger tribe. Like she grew up
Mm.
with people and are still friends with people that she like went to middle school with. And so it can look different from different folks. If you're a person who wants a
Yeah.
bigger tribe, you can have a bigger tribe. But if you're a person who's like, look, I don't even like people like that. The thing is to recognize you can't do it all alone.
Yeah.
And if you want to learn how to feel safe with other people, you have to be with other people.
Very true.
And one of the last ones that I think is a big major point, again, we're not touching on all of them, but is setting emotional boundaries. And I know y'all like, why y'all keep talking about boundaries? Because y'all don't have them and y'all need them. I feel like a lot of times, especially in therapy, I hear people like, oh my gosh, boundaries, 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 boundaries. But it's like because they are so helpful. And here's the thing, boundaries aren't just so you can start telling everybody, do what I say, or I will take away my love. Because there are some people that use it like that. There are some people where you gotta go back, like, hey, let's talk about what boundaries are. These are things and parameters to keep you
Right.
safe, not to gain control and manipulate people or to force yourself into isolation. That's not at all what boundaries are about. But something me and Gabby talked about earlier, which is like you can recognize your parents' emotional immaturity, and it does not necessarily mean that you have to cut them off. But like also parents that we have worked through things with and we have battled things out with and we have put up
Yeah.
boundaries with as well. It doesn't have to be black or white, either or.
It does not. Um, you know, me and mom, we've worked through our issues. Like we're solid. Like that's my homegirl, always and forever. But with that father of mine, it is a revolving door because again, I still believe people can change. And if he ever decided that he wanted to like call me and be like, hey, like, can we go to dinner? Can we just talk? I would be open to it. But I also have boundaries set for myself because I'm a very emotional person. now I'm able to have a conversation with you like an adult. Like I'm not going to break down crying. Why? Because I worked through this, and I think that just comes with growth when you grow and you
Yeah.
work through your problems.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not there. Me and my one father, like, I still feel like we gotta fight. I did the therapy, I did the communicating, I did the boundaries, I did a lot of stuff. And at this point, I feel like I just gotta rock that man's jaw a good two times.
Just go ahead and just
So
throw them hands up real quick, and we'll see if this works. If not,
look,
we'll
he's
go
a tricky
plan
fella.
B.
He's a tricky fella. It wouldn't go down like that.
Mhm.
Next time I talk to that man will probably be on the Netflix documentary about him. I'm sure he's doing enough stuff that at some point in life, I fully expect
The untold
documentary
story.
people to
Like
knock on my
untold
door.
story.
Do you want to talk about this man's crimes to humanity?
You would have a documentary too, and it would be good.
Look, look, man, but you don't have to always do the cutaway. You know what your relationship is like with your parents. You know what you tried and what you have not tried, and you just have to determine what works for you. There's a lot of power in setting boundaries, deciding what type
Yep.
of interactions you want to engage in and what you will and won't tolerate. Emotional boundaries can protect your well-being, but also help you define where your parents' needs end and where yours
Mm-hmm.
begin. And I think
I
that's
agree.
really important part to all of this. Now, again, the book is called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, and we did not go over a thorough thing of this, but we took out some key points I think is very important to talk about because, I feel like on the rise, we have I promise you I'm working on a TikTok. We do have a TikTok. And every now and then I'll go on like the creator insights and I'll look at like the topics that people who follow us are interested in. And it keeps coming up like adult relationships with your parents, how to heal from parent trauma, how to be friends with your parents as an adult, and things like that. And so it felt really important that we touch upon this subject. And I just thought that this was a really good book that can be really, really helpful and it has some really helpful tips. But we did not touch on it thoroughly. I would recommend to go out and be reading it. Also, I also recommend for you to really sit with yourself and as we were talking about those boundaries and so forth, also recognize the work that you've already done. If you've
Mm-hmm.
already done the boundary thing, if you already done the trying to talk thing, you already done the therapy thing, and you are literally just working with a parent who's non-compliant and don't give a fuck about you or your needs, no one is asking you to put yourself at even further emotional risk and danger by keep trying with someone who does not want to try with you.
Sometimes you gotta walk away for your own health and their safety.
I know there's a lot of people who are in the healing fields that are big on work it through, work it through. Let me tell you, I'm big on cut it off when it needs to be cut off. And so if that's what you have to do, that is what you have to do. And maybe one day we will have an episode on this because again, both me and Gabby have parents in our life who we have cut off and no one prepares you for how hard and awkward that can be. So maybe we'll have an episode where we talk about that. So yeah, let's put that on the list. We'll do that one next
We'll
whenever.
have we'll definitely have to have a talk about this.
So guys, we'll do an episode on what a cutting off a parent is like.
Mhm.
Um,
We'll
because yeah, I
definitely
think
talk
we
about
talk
it.
about the fluffy parts. We talk about it's so free and da 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 da, but there is some
No.
downsides. And if it's something you think about, we want you to be prepared. Not to say not to do
Yeah,
it, but so you're not caught off guard.
exactly.
But we want to say thank you guys for enjoying us. And we hope
Yes.
what you get from this episode is that at the end of the day, healing from an emotionally immature parent is like a journey. And it's a
Mhm.
journey that is worth taking. It's about
It is.
reclaiming the emotional maturity that you weren't modeled as a child and finding ways to care for yourself in ways that your parents just couldn't or refused to. Again, we do recommend the book, Dr. Lindsay Gibson. It's incredible read, it's a credible resource. So we do recommend that you give it a read. But we thank you guys for joining us. Follow us on Instagram at SheWolf Alchemy. Follow us on TikTok, guys. I am working on the TikTok. I know you like rest. You've been saying that since May, but like TikTok, some player haters. Like, I don't know what else to tell y'all. I will post a healing that's just me and Gabby or me and Nick or like me and Ashley. Like, you should heal. And TikTok is like, violation. How dare you tell people to heal? I don't know what's happening. or they just won't show it. It'll be up for a whole day and it's like 2 views. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what's happening. I'm working on it. I promise I'm working on it. But you should go follow to help. Our TikTok is SheWolf Alchemy Podcast. And of course, we'll have a new episode for you guys in 2 weeks. Like and share. Please leave a review for the podcast wherever you are listening. And yeah, you hear the sound of our voice in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.